Which side do you want?
E. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Edinburgh International Book Festival. I am Phil Jupitus.
Well remembered.
Sorry, I am 57. A little bit of checking needs to be done. Yes, this evening's event is, of course, an evening with my very good friend, the man who wanders around the Edinburgh Festival, much like Michael Leavis wanders around Glastonbury. Mr. Ian Rankin, ladies and gentlemen. Ian Rankin.
Thank you.
Brought to you in association with our sponsors tonight, Hampton and Company. Banking. So that's the slogan. I've been spitballing with them for a wee while. And a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, our signers tonight, Joe.
Yay.
Who has absolutely promised to sharpen up some of my material for me. So a section of the audience will enjoy me more from Joe than actually from me. So, buddy, how the hell are you?
I survived the night in Glasgow last night. So.
I know, yes, this is very exciting. Let's talk about first gig in Glasgow stories, because yours is very fresh. Your first gig in Glasgow last night. Now, this is not you know, doing like a book event or something, because you've done them before, haven't you?
Yeah.
Done loads of those.
Yeah.
We're talking now about your band.
Yeah. Best Picture.
Best Picture.
Best Picture. Yeah. It's a good title for a band. It's a good name for a band, and we actually have a song called Best Picture.
Oh well, so bands that have got songs that have got their own names in them.
Queen, Killer Queen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
57, ladies and gentlemen. 57 years old. So, how was it? How were you feeling before your first gig in Glasgow last night?
Well, this band came together. It was basically some disaffected journalists who started it, and of a certain age, and said we need someone on vocals. You'll do. And so I got so mostly we just noodled. You know, we just went into rehearsal studio, had fun, and then it got a wee bit serious for a while. We actually made a single. 45 RPM single on hot pink vinyl. And then basically Al Murray stole my band, is what happened.
What?
Yeah, so the first person he stole was my keyboard player, who went to join Fat Cops, which is Al Murray's band. And then both my guitarists went to play in Al Murray's band, while remaining in my band. But because Al's band had an album they were making, and they were touring and getting festivals and things, we hadn't rehearsed or played live since October last year. So we had one rehearsal on Monday, and then last night we went on stage. And you know, honestly, hand on heart, we were fucking great. I don't know. You know, we just honestly ask anybody who was in the front row.
So it went deeper than the front row.
Yeah, it was a sold out gig. There were 200 punters there.
Where did you play?
I'm going to forget the name of it. It's a pub in Glasgow with a kind of downstairs.
I hear there are
venue.
some.
Yeah, downstairs venue, and you'd look around, and there was someone from the Pastels over there. There was someone from the BMX Bandits over there. There was someone from Teenage Fan Club over there. So that's a Glasgow audience. A lot of musical people. More musical people off stage than on stage, you might say.
Yeah. And so.
But it's a very primal thing, because the first thing I ever wanted to be was a rock star.
Yeah.
Way back when I was 12 years old, and we got our first dance set record player.
But did you want to be a singer, or did you want to be a guitarist?
No, singer. I had no musical ability whatsoever. We had a piano in the front room, an old upright piano that my sister Linda could play a little bit. And I sort of learnt enough music to be able to do Cliff Richard's Living Doll by writing the notes on the piano.
Yeah.
So I think it went something like C, C, A, G, C, A, G, E, C, A, G, E, B, C, C.
Does it? Because there'll be one in.
It's like, yeah, I know. It was definitely C-A-G-E, C-A-G-E, B-C-C. But that was it. It was like one note, plinky, plinky, plonky. And of course I bought a guitar. We all bought guitars.
Yeah.
And I got Bert Whedon's Play in a Day, the book.
How were you at the end of that first day?
Pretty grim. I looked at the last page of the book, and it said, if you've got this far, you can now play Onward Christian Soldiers. That wasn't what I was aiming for. Young Phil Jupitus, I was not aiming to be able to play Onward Christian Soldiers in my bedroom.
Pleasing. So this secret, the secret rock star thing, how soon did it sort of did you ever at school, did you form bands at school and stuff?
The first band I formed were completely imaginary. They were called the Amoebas, and the lead singer was Ian Caput. And I wrote all their lyrics, and it was a 5-piece band. I forget the names of, what the guitarist was called Blue Lightning, not his real name. And I would write their lyrics, I would design their album sleeves, I had a top 10. I wrote it all down, and because I had a top 10, I needed 9 other bands. And the titles of their songs, and they went on Parkinson, the chat show, and I scripted an entire Parkinson episode for them. I was creating a whole
Parkinson
world.
was scripted?
No, I did it.
Oh, sorry.
I scripted, no, they weren't a real band.
Ruined my childhood.
No. So I wrote an episode of Parkinson that they appeared on.
Oh, right, I see what you're doing there.
So I did all of that. And then when I was 17, 18, a friend of mine had a punk band in Fife, and he asked if I would be the vocalist. We were called the Dancing Pigs.
You've told me about the pigs before, the Dancing Pigs before.
And they pop up in one of the Rebus books.
Yeah.
It's a hugely successful U2 type band. But in real life, we practiced in the YWCA in Cowdenbeath and played about 6 gigs, of which one was supporting a heavy metal band. And I think we basically got bottled off stage at that one.
I find that quite doubtful that there were Christian women in Cowdenbeath.
Oh, yeah. Maybe that's how we could get a room. Wasn't overly used.
Okay.
Yeah, the YWCA.
Yeah.
Our only fans, because we had these fans who would come and watch us rehearse, were the local Hells Angels. And there were 3 or 4 of them. Satan's Slaves was the gang. Mm-hmm. And 3 or 4 Satan's Slaves would sit on the sofa terrifying us, smoking dope, while we rehearsed our punk songs.
And did they ever take umbrage at your work, or did they seem to enjoy it?
They were. I mean, apart from talking about setting cats on fire and such like, they were okay guys. And luckily, we never came to an Altamont type situation where they did security for us at one of our gigs.
And rightly so. That's a good thing.
But I gave it up after that. I mean, that was kind of it. You know, that was a teenage dalliance.
Yeah.
We did send a tape to John Peel. He never played it.
You see, so my first gig in Glasgow was supporting Billy Bragg on the 27th of April 1985. I remember that date because it's the first day I ever came to Scotland, and I was a political poet called Porky the Poet, and I used to do things like, Mrs. Thatcher, she is bad, and her government, they are mad. And that passed. You could get gigs doing that sort of stuff. The 80s had a very low bar for political poetry, all right? And the gig that I did, first ever time in Glasgow, was Barrowlands.
Ooh.
Let me tell you, a Barrowlands audience absolutely loves a small, fat English boy telling them how to think politically. I had a half-hour set, Ian, that I delivered in a shade under 14 minutes.
Yeah.
Every single word of it. I'm very proud.
While dodging projectiles.
Exactly, yeah.
But you know what? If you can survive that, in Glasgow, if you can survive that, you can survive anything.
Did you do an encore last night? Did you do an encore?
We've not got enough songs to do encores.
Oh.
We have precisely 5 songs.
Do the first one again.
Yeah, we did think about it. But an encore was not called for. But we played our 5 songs, and the audience were quite appreciative, and then watched Al Murray's band, and then ran for the train. It was just very rock and roll. What can I tell you?
Hang on a minute. You did a gig and then had to watch your ex-band do a gig.
It's not my ex-band. I mean, the two guitarists played in both bands last night.
Oh, this is all very messy.
No, it's not.
It's all a bit Beatles
it's
and
fine.
Yoko.
It's fine. And we're okay with the keyboard player Neil. It's okay. It's all water
everything's
under the bridge.
cool.
Everything's okay.
All right.
Okay. So no, it was good fun. It was good fun. And it's that, you know what? I mean, to be serious for a moment, writing lyrics allows me to, think about constructing narrative in a different way.
Yeah.
So it's actually quite fun for me not to be writing a novel, but to try and write something different. And can you still get my song lyrics tend to be kind of stories. They are narratives. Things are happening. There's almost like a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it's fun to try and construct it in 3 minutes.
Do you, and have you over the years, while you've been writing, do you write poetry?
That's how I started off, man. I mean, I started off writing lyrics for non-existent bands. And then by the time I was in the Dancing Pigs, I was writing poetry at high school, 17, 18. Mostly poems to girls I couldn't talk to in the playground. You know, so little kind of sonnets to them that would hide under the bed and never show anybody. And when I arrived at Edinburgh University, it was a kind of a release, because suddenly I didn't have to hide the fact that I was writing poetry. I could proclaim the fact that I was writing poetry, and I wouldn't get kicked in the head. As long as I did it within the confines of Edinburgh University Student Association. I wasn't doing it in Niddrie or Pilton. But I was in the Poetry Society, and we used to invite poets along, and he would get paid 40 quid by the Scottish Arts Council to come and do a recitation for us, and then the student poets could get up and read their own stuff. Yeah, and I thought most of it had been destroyed, but it's actually gone into the National Library of Scotland.
This is it. So let's come on to this. You have your archive. That's a very marvellous kind of way of describing what is, in a real sense, your shit. Your rubbish. Just a skip full of stuff that we all accumulate. Your detritus, sir.
It really isn't. It isn't, because I went through it all and took out all the real crap. So,
what a shame.
So the real crap went through a shredder. I asked Ian Banks's widow, Adele, I said, look, when Ian died, you got rid of a lot of his stuff. How did you do it? She went, this is the shredder you want. This is the make and model, does 12 sheets, does staples, does paper clips. This is what you want. So I bought that shredder and just sat in the garage. I went through bank statements, bus tickets, train tickets, 40 years of stuff.
As a keen collage artist, I'm appalled.
I know. Book reviews, you name it. And then you go through and go, oh, that's maybe interesting to somebody, or might be in the future interesting to somebody. And that's the stuff that the archive got. So there's rejection letters, there's the early poetry, some of it. They got some of the early poetry.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, mate.
Not the really early poetry. Not the love poems to the girls in the playground. But the stuff I was writing at 17, 18, 19.
Oh, the idea of you sitting wistfully on a wall in Fife.
Yeah.
Oh, Morag.
I know. If only she knew I was
you
here.
do know.
You got a very jaundiced view of Fife.
What?
What?
I've been there 2 years. I'm learning slowly.
Come on. Val McDermott came from Fife, John Burnside, David Mach, Jack Vetriano, Jackie Leavin, the Skids. You know, big country.
That's why I went there, just to get a little bit of that juice you've all got. Yeah.
I think it'll do
Fife
it for you.
magic.
But you went to the East Nuke.
I did indeed, which is like going to Narnia. It's a little bit dinky there, isn't it?
Well, no, it's also got a really good grassroots music scene.
Oh, it's fantastic. Oh, no, don't get me wrong, it's absolutely brilliant, but I've never lived anywhere that rural before, and I'm not saying they're nosy, but rural people are hungry for all information because it's from the outside world. So, and it's like every time I walk out of my front door, there's a wee old man stood there in a tweed cap. All right, Phil? What you doing? Take my bins out, Alan. Oh, no. Oh, I like it there.
I know you do. I know you do.
I know you do.
I know you do. You'll do anything for a laugh, but you do enjoy it. I know you like it.
Yeah.
And you love Edinburgh as well. And I think one of the things about Edinburgh is, that it is a place that is welcoming to creative, artistic people, to outsiders, to weird people. But at the same time, it's not huge. You can feel it's not quite a village, but you can very quickly feel you're getting a sense of what kind of place it is and how you might fit in. You know?
You've stayed, you've remained, very local. Fife and Edinburgh, this is your patch. And yet a lot of people, in order to kind of fire up the creative mojo, need to get away. It's all about, for a lot of people, the story of the creative arc is about getting away. Why didn't you?
I did.
Where?
I got away when I did a PhD at the University of Edinburgh, and instead of doing the PhD, I started writing books at the taxpayer's expense. Thank you very much. Never finished the PhD. When the money ran out, got married. My wife Miranda was working in London. We got a flat in Tottenham. So we lived in Tottenham for 4 years. And then she said, we've got to get out of this place basically. London is grinding us down. And so we moved to rural France, southwest France.
Oh, wow.
And I was there for 6 years.
Oh, man.
In the middle of nowhere, pre-internet,
Yeah.
almost pre-computers. And so a lot of the stuff that's in the archive are manuscripts of books set in Edinburgh, but actually written in rural France, and a lot of correspondence, because this was in the days before emails. So I was keeping in touch with people by writing letters. There's a lot of correspondence between me and Ian Banks, for example.
Yeah.
And other writers, Val McDermott, Ian Cranton-Smith, William McIlvanney, a whole bunch of Scottish writers who I kept in touch with.
You didn't shred those, did you?
Nope,
Good
they're
man.
in the archive.
Well done.
They're in the archive.
Excellent
Envelopes
work.
and everything. I kept everything. Of course, the one thing I've not got is my side of the correspondence, because I didn't keep the letters I wrote to them.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one. I remember, in fact, there's one PS on an Ian Banks letter. He was living in Ferry Hills Road in North Queensferry. And I'd obviously mentioned a newish book that seemed to be being quite successful to him. I mean, a Scottish book that was quite successful. And he wrote back and said, P.S., who is Irvin Welsh? and at that time, he'd not heard of Trainspotting.
Oh, man.
And it had been out a few months at that time, and I'd heard about it. Living in rural France, I'd heard about this book, but living in North Queensferry, I'd kind of passed him by.
That's absolutely unbelievable.
I know. I love that. So all that stuff's in
Was there always a plan to return to Scotland then, when you're in France?
I don't know. I think maybe. I don't know. I mean, I think maybe Miranda would have kept on travelling. I don't know. I mean, maybe. But the books were set very much in Edinburgh. It was a city that I was completely infatuated with, in a kind of love-hate relationship. I just wanted to know more about this place. I needed to find out what makes it tick. And so I had to keep coming back to do research trips and stuff. And eventually, family reasons, kids getting to school age, we thought we're going to move back. So we moved back in 1996, and that was it. And I mean, I'm not bored with the place. I don't get bored with the festival. But when you're trying to walk down George IV Bridge of an evening, to get to the pub, and you're basically walking down the middle of the fucking road, because and the council have barricaded it off with bloody railings with posters advertising fringe shows. You go, why? It's like wacky races.
No, it's like there's a new guy at road planning at Edinburgh Council, MC Escher. I swear that I was down the Cowgate the other day, and those big I swear I saw a taxi going over, like upside down over one of them arches. It was like very, very confusing to me.
I mean, if you can survive Edinburgh in August, you can survive anything, I reckon. And of course that's me being grumpy, and I can channel all that to Rebus.
This is the thing you say.
And in fact, not to Rebus necessarily, but to big Ger Cafferty, who happens to live in Quartermile.
What I quite like,
looking over the bloody meadows.
I know, yeah, but you've got
nothing but barbecues and Chinese theatre.
Is that the ladyboys keeping me up at night? John, can you not do something about those ladyboys?
You're showing your age. They're not at the Meadows anymore.
Are they not? Where are they now?
They're down at the canal.
I bet they are.
Fountain Bridge, yeah. Fountain Bridge. But no, there's a circus. There's a kind of late night circus. It's on the Meadows and stuff now. And people playing bongos till all bloody hours. And I can just imagine Cafferty looking out of his window of his kind of, triplex apartment, possibly with an air rifle in the dark.
Have you not ever thought of setting up a Ger Cafferty Twitter account?
It'd be a great idea.
Mate, you should totally do that.
I know. Maybe there is.
The fucking circus kept me up again last night.
They won't do that again. A can of petrol comes cheap.
I got a wee Russian juggler knocking me up stew every night now.
Oh, you totally should do that, man.
I love. You know what? I've almost fallen in love with Big Ger Cafferty, which I think is problematic when you fall in love with the bad guys in your books. Thomas Harris did it with Hannibal Lecter, and the Hannibal Lecter books became much less good when he started to explain Hannibal Lecter to you. I think because he loved the guy, he really liked the guy, and when he starts to explain evil, then that makes the person less evil and less charismatic. And somebody said to me a few books ago, I've fallen in love with Cafferty. He's such a big bear of a guy. And I thought, well, I've not done my job properly then, because he shouldn't be likable. So in the book, not this one, but the book before it, he goes about somebody with a hammer.
Yeah.
I thought that's much more his kind of style. I mean, he's a kind of Glasgow-style gangster from the 60s, is what he is. He's a throwback to that kind of way that gangsters used to be and aren't so much anymore. But yeah.
Was there, I was always wondering, was there ever a guy that he was modelled on? Was there ever
a series.
A figure, like a real face around Edinburgh
Not
in the
so
70s?
much, not so much Edinburgh. There wasn't a Mr. Big, there were some Mr. Smalls.
Yeah.
I mean, there were some guys who ran clubs and stuff who could get things done. But they weren't in the Cafferty, they weren't as big a figure as him. He's much more like the Glasgow gangsters of the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
The Arthur Marshalls of this world, and Paul Ferris's to a certain extent. There was a milieu of Glasgow gangs that became gangsters. And in the first book that he's mentioned in, which is Tooth and Nail, his backstory is that he grew up in Glasgow. Yeah. And Rebus is in court giving evidence against him. And then I forgot that was his backstory. And when I brought him back a few books later, suddenly he's grown up in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
And so he's got two completely different backstories depending on which book you read. And that's just because I was young and naive and stupid and hadn't gone back and referenced it and found that stuff out. And, you know, I just left it in so that I can be constantly humiliated by people who read the series from start to finish and go, I think you'll find in book 5, I think you'll find in book 4 there is no foot rail at the Oxford Bar or something, you know. That's a true story. Someone wrote to me in France and said, look, you've put a foot rail in front of the bar in the Oxford Bar. I've just been in there is no foot rail. So Harry Cullen, who owned the Oxford Bar until recently, put one in, God bless him. He installed a foot rail just to save me my blushes.
The relationship between Cafferty and John is really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Now since Rebus has, quit.
Yeah.
As he fuck. He's not quit, has he? He's
not a cop anymore. He's not a carrying detective anymore. Yeah.
I love that device of him doing cold cases as a kind of tick over is brilliant, man.
But yeah, I mean, you know what? I mean, people say, it makes it hard for you as a novelist if your detective is no longer a detective. But I like that. I just like the fact that it keeps challenging me. Every time that I think I can get lazy now, I can just go through the motions. You go, no. My life has changed. I'm not a cop anymore. So how do I get him into a police case when he's a civilian? His health is not what it was.
Yeah.
So there's things he can't do that he could do a few books ago. He can't use his physical presence to intimidate people the way he used to.
Yeah.
So a whole different set of challenges are presented to me as a writer that keeps me on my toes and keeps him fresh as a character for people. And his relationship with Cafferty, they were guys who both used their muscle in a way to make the world dance to their tune. They can't do it anymore. They are guys, the world is passing them by, and they're looking around them, they're in their mid-60s. We can't make sense of this place anymore. Yeah. Do we still have a role in this world? Do we still make a difference in this world? And so they've got a lot in common. And, health-wise and in terms of everything else, they've got a lot in common. And I love that. There's an empathy between them. You're never sure if they'll end up killing each other or going to the same retirement home.
Yeah.
And then fighting each other for the last soft-boiled egg.
Is it a tricky thing to make a character who is so well-known and beloved, to give him a frailty, to give him weakness, particularly when that inner strength of Rebus is something that we all see and know, his doggedness, his stubbornness, creature of habit, addictive personality, an alcoholic, all of these things. As you peel that away from him with age, is that a tricky thing to make a character that you've created a weaker human?
I just think it's believable. You get some detective series where the detective never ages, never changes. The world around them changes, but they don't. And I want to reflect the way that Edinburgh has changed, the way society is changing. And how can I do that if my detective doesn't age, doesn't change? So it seemed obvious to me that as he gets older, he can't be the same macho guy he was when he was 40 in the first book. He's a different character now. He's a pensioner, for God's sake.
Yeah.
And as a friend, I gave him COPD, emphysema, as it was. My wife said, he's had a charmed life. He needs to have some kind of health condition. And a friend of hers who's a GP said, well, maybe emphysema, maybe COPD, because he's smoked and everything else, doesn't take care of himself. And a guy I know on the internet, a writer who's on Twitter, I know has COPD. So he gave me some background, and so that sort of. And then for this latest book, I got back in touch with him. I said, look, Rebus has had this for a couple of years now. How's he coping? He said, does he still live 2 stories up in a tenement? I went, yeah. He said, he's fucked. You know, he can't climb a flight of stairs without pausing halfway with his inhaler. You know, so in this book, whenever Rebus, even when he goes to Leith Police Station, which is up a flight of stairs, his heart sinks. Yeah. Because, you know, and Siobhan's visiting him late one night, and he's coming home, and he says, oh, can you go upstairs and get the dog, and we'll take the dog for a walk, to save him having to climb up 2 flights of stairs. Yeah. So he's now thinking, can I really move into a bungalow? Is that who I've become? Bungalow man? You know? Black Hall? You know, sort of you know. Or has it got to be a ground floor flat, a main door flat? You know, but he's stubborn. He's thrawn, as we say in Scotland, and so they'll have to drag him out of that second floor flat. But my writer friend said, you know, really, he's in a bad way now. And somebody else said to me, oh, there's a COPD choir in Edinburgh. He could join the choir. And I went, I can't. Anybody? It's a lovely idea. But I can't think of anybody less likely to join a choir than Rebus.
Like, every time they do Oklahoma, 4 of them pass out.
Yeah.
I should join. So this is the next. How long is it since you've done? So the House of Lies is the last one.
Yeah.
The most recent one, not last. God, I nearly lost some of you then. I mean the last. How much is his mortality on your mind each time you step up to the plate, as it were, to do another one of these?
Well, I mean, I feel a bit of a fraud sitting here because I've not written anything substantial since June last year when I finished writing that. So that book was finished in June last year. It was published in October last year. Paperback came out earlier this year. And I had a kind of year, you know, just moving house, downsizing, that got in the way. So I've not written anything for ages, but come September, October, I've got to put the foot back on the accelerator again. I've got a stage play, a Rebus stage play that I'm supposed to be writing, and also a new book and both of those have got to be delivered by June next year. And
There's another telly adaptation, isn't there?
No, the first one wasn't a telly adaptation. The first one was written specifically for the stage, and this will be written specifically for the stage.
Yeah.
We might get a telly actor in to do it because that puts bums on seats. Right. Yeah. You know, we got Big Jim McDonald from Coronation Street to play him first time round.
You could do an amazing kind of Godot with Cafferty and
Rebus. I know.
Just the two of them in the Oxford.
But you know what?
Bickering.
But that was the glory of that first play, and it was almost the reason I did it, was that I wanted to see Rebus and Cafferty in the same room as me. Yeah. You don't get that from television or film. I wanted them in the same room as me, and the only way I could achieve that was in a theatre. Yeah. And we got John Stahl, who was in Game of Thrones, an amazing Scottish actor, to play Cafferty, and he stole the show. He was that lovely mix of charisma and evil. In fact, when he walked on the stage in Edinburgh, my wife grabbed my arm, you know, because he had that physical presence about him. And it was lovely. The scenes between him and Rebus were really great. And I would love to try and replicate that I mean, with theatre being the way it is these days, you can't afford more than a few actors. So waiting for Godot's that's why it's on so many times. They only need, 5 actors, 4 actors, 5 actors? Yeah. Maybe. But anyway, between times, let's put out a sales pitch for Christmas. We're bringing out a really old book of mine in November called Westwind. Mm-hmm. And this is a book that I disowned many years ago. It was published in 1999. And it was heavily changed. I know this because I've kept my diaries from the period. It was written and rewritten, and my agent said, no, it's no good, change it. The editor said, it's no good, change it. Another editor came in and said, keep changing it, until it didn't feel like my book anymore. Right. And when it was published, I just didn't love it anymore. So having had one hardcover and one paperback run, I said, that's it. And I withdrew it, and it's never been published since. And then on Twitter, about 6 months ago, someone said to me, I've just read that book, Westwind. It's actually pretty good. And I went, really? So I went back and reread it, and I thought, it's actually pretty good. And in some ways, weirdly prescient. It's set in 1989, but an alternative history in 1989, where America is retrenching and withdrawing from Europe. withdrawn all its troops from Europe. And the European Union and America are at loggerheads, Russia sitting in the sidelines, well, Soviet Union, as it was, sitting on the sidelines, Britain caught in the middle. There are space satellites watching every move we make, you know, all that kind of stuff. That kind of air of paranoia is there in it. And I just thought, wow, this kind of feels a bit like now, heavily dated. Almost nobody has a computer. Someone explains a modem at one point. People don't have mobile phones. Central locking of cars is a new thing. Not remote central locking, Phil. Just turning the key and all the locks drop.
Does it have jetpacks, and do we go on holiday to the moon?
Sadly not.
Ah.
But you can smoke on airplanes.
Yay.
You can smoke on airplanes. It just feels weirdly kind of dated, and we've left all that in. Anyway, I've tidied it up a little bit, and we've kind of, you know, we've kind of rejigged it a little bit, but kept it in that period, and you know, kept it pretty much as it was, with a new introduction from me, and it's going to come out in time for Christmas. Hurrah! So I will have produced a book this year. It'll just be a very old, weird book.
Is it a dystopian sci-fi? Is it one of those?
Yeah, is it? It's not really sci-fi, because I mean, it was set at the time it was written.
Yeah, all right.
But it's almost, I mean, it's an alternative history.
Alternative history,
Alternative history is kind of what it is. And it was fun going back through it and going, oh yeah, the listening station is in Binbrook in Lincolnshire. And the only reason I put the satellite listening station there is that my sister was married to a guy in the RAF, and he was based at RAF Binbrook.
Yeah.
So when I was a teenager, I used to get sent there for summer holidays, because there was nothing else to do in Fife. Let's send him to somewhere where there's even less to do than there is in Fife, Lincolnshire, you know, and living on an RAF base for 2 weeks. So that's why I chose that. So it's fun remembering all these things and going back into my diaries and seeing how sad I was at the time when I was writing this book, and it was getting knocked back and rejigged, and it took 3 years to get it published, which was very unusual for me. But anyway, let's wait and see.
Is it fun to kind of look back over stuff? Elvis Costello very famously does these marvellous essays when he reissues his albums. He reassesses his own work, and quite boldly in a way, because when he did the reissue notes for Goodbye Cruel World, which was reissued by Demon as a double CD edition, his first line of his essay was, "Congratulations, you have now bought my worst album."
Yeah.
Is it interesting looking back at your own work, or is there a slight sort of, oh God, no, not that?
Miranda, that's £5 earlier. It took him 30 minutes to mention Elvis Costello. Yeah, I mean, I remember a Monty Python album, and when you took out the plain white sleeve, written in it was, "You have just wasted £2.99. Yeah, no, I mean, I very seldom go back and look at my old stuff. You know, once a book is written, I'm done with it. And occasionally I do have to go back because my publisher says, can you write a new introduction or something for a new issue, a reissue of the book? And I'll be forced to go back and go, oh my God, that's a bit clunky, or that doesn't quite work, or there's a misspelling. And I don't do it with an awful lot of grace, because I've moved on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And I hope I'm getting better as I go on. So you don't like to go back and look at your old stuff when you weren't as good as you are now.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's, you know, there are lovely moments you go, oh, I remember writing that scene. That's a funny line. You know, nobody else thinks it's a funny line, but I think it's a funny line. Or you go, wow, these books were much darker. The early books were much darker than I remember them. Because I think the books, they're still about murder. But I think in tone, they're probably, although Rebus is aging, I think in tone they're a little bit lighter than they were early on.
Yeah.
And they're getting shorter as well. I'm starting to, as I get older, I appreciate short things more than I used to. Short gigs, short films,
Five songs.
My band do 5 songs, yeah. We've got an EP's worth. But, you know, I mean, I went to see bloody Apocalypse Now a couple of nights ago, and it's like 3 hours something. It's a new cut.
It's so funny that you're saying that now. I saw you just before you went to see it. You went, I'm going to see Apocalypse Now, and it's a 3-hour cut. And
I know.
Oh, my God.
Well, they put all that bloody French stuff back in, all the French vineyard stuff back in again. Rubbish. Anyway, but I do, and so this is, you know, my books are getting shorter, and I mean, you know, crime novels used to be 200 pages, and they were great books.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine just sent me a book. He's a New Zealand musician. He's in a band called The Chills. And he's got a great memory. And he remembered that 2 or 3 years ago, he mentioned to me an Australian crime writer of the 40s and 50s called Arthur Upfield, who did Boney. Remember the Boney TV show?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? And he sent me one of the Boney books, and it was under 200 pages, and it was just great.
Yeah.
You know? And I was going, yeah, that's what books used to be. You know?
Richard Starks, they bang
All
through,
those.
don't they?
Yeah, all those early noir novels and all the early classic crime novels. But I think it's just that I'm afraid I'm going to drop dead before I finish writing the next book.
Yeah.
Is also part of it.
But I mean, you were saying about that, looking back at your work gives you a certain mindset, a certain satisfaction, and that you've just done your life. You've been sat in the garage shredding, looking at an entire life. That must kind of addle the brain a little.
It was kind of weird. I mean, Miranda will tell you this, my wife will tell you. I went in one day and I said, I've just found like a file of about 400 sheets of paper, and it's a script or a series of scripts for a TV cop show that I wrote, and I've got literally no memory of it. And that was from about 1999, 2000.
Yeah.
And I've got literally no memory of that at all. And it's hundreds of pages. And I said to my agent, do you remember that? And he went, vaguely. You know, I was trying to write for The Bill, the TV show The Bill. I've got scripts that I was putting into The Bill, trying to write for the TV show. Short stories I don't remember writing. Letters from publishers about projects I've got no memory of. Early onset Alzheimer's, who knows?
Yeah,
but I think I was just punting out so much stuff. I was doing so much stuff to see throw it at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah. A
lot of early stuff, horror stories, you know. I was trying to write anything that I thought might sell, so that I could become a full-time writer. So it is weird going back. It is weird going back. And it is, I think, you know, my generation is the last generation of writers who will leave a written archive.
Yeah.
You know, because it was correspondence. It was physical letters you wrote to each other. When was the last time you wrote a letter to somebody?
No, exactly.
An actual letter to a mate.
Yeah.
You send them a tweet or a text or something now. So it's going to be the collected tweets of Irvine Welsh. It's what researchers are going to be looking at in a wee while. And here, I mean, these lovely letters from all these authors are dead now.
Yeah.
Ruth Rendell, P.D. James, William McIlvanney, Ian Crichton Smith, Michael Dibdin, Colin Dexter, Philip Kerr. You know.
Yeah.
They're no longer with us, and all that's left are these little notes and moments from their lives that they've written down, and all their recorded work, of course.
Yeah.
All these great books that you hope stick around forever. That's why writers become writers. It's because we're trying to leave something behind when we go.
Yeah. Speaking of that, when will you start work on the next Rebus?
Well, September, October, if I get an idea. You know, yay, if I get an idea. But it doesn't matter how, you know, it will be finished by June and it will be published October next year. It won't be published before then.
With all the change, because I think you moved. Have you moved? I don't know. Are you still same house? Or
No.
We've moved.
Yeah, we've moved, and you know, we've downsized. We've just decluttered. Everything is just ready. I mean, I've got a lovely wee room that's my office. And I've written a couple of short stories there and introductions to other people's books and stuff since we moved, so I know it's got a nice feel to it. I can write. I will go up to Cromarty. We've got a house up in Cromarty, which never used to have any mobile phone signal. They've put a mast up somewhere. You can now get mobile phone signal.
Oh, dear.
But we've got no TV up there or anything, so usually I go up there to start the book.
Yeah.
And spend a couple of weeks up there and just get the first 50, 60 pages rough, but get it started.
Yeah.
And then come back to Edinburgh. But we'll see. We'll see. It will be, I mean, I've never missed a deadline yet, so touch wood. If the good Lord spares me, there'll be another Rebus book October next year. And I've not even got a title yet. I need to get a title before I start, even if it doesn't end up being the final title. And I've been bouncing some ideas around. I gave one or two to my agent. He went, nah. So we're still, you know, and I need something. I need something that just is the atmosphere of the story that I'm about to write.
Yeah.
It's contained in the title. In a House of Lies, I love it. It's a rare one for me because it's not a song title or a misheard line.
This is it. Yeah.
It's just it just came to my head in A House of Lies. Originally it was a House of Lies. Yeah, but A House of Lies is only 4 words. And I had a run of 5-word titles, and they all got to number 1. Then I did Rather Be the Devil, and it only got to number 2. So I stuck the word in.
Pathetic.
I stuck the word in to make a 5-word title. And it got to number 1.
You can't
got to
flaw
number
the
1.
system.
No, if you're superstitious,
Yeah.
you know, you don't screw with it.
Okay.
So whatever the next title has to be, it will be 5 words.
I look forward very much to Ian's book of haiku.
Yeah.
He very much likes the numbers. That's what it's all about. So,
Cooking with John Rebus. Yeah, that's what it's on the floor.
oh man. So,
Bedtime stories with John Rebus.
can you do? Yeah, work it out.
Bedtime stories
Bedtime stories.
with John Rebus. 5.
Right. No. So it's yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. No. Sorry, I was doing haikus. So it is time to throw the floor over to questions for Mr. Rankin. Now, if you could possibly wait for the microphone to reach you, because we are also filming and recording tonight's event.
Oh God, are we?
Yes, we are indeed. Yes. Yes. 5 songs. You said it. So. So if you do have a question, lift those hands high, and then we will get our microphone to that. So straight away, I see a finger aloft.
Keep the hand up. Keep the hand up, sir.
Keep that hand up, sir.
Hand up.
It's all right. I love that man looked quite panicky there.
Yeah.
What was the finger you had, sir? Don't worry. Now you've got all 5.
There you go.
And there we are. Your name, sir?
Peter Meakin.
Hello, Peter. Your question, sir?
An author a couple of days ago was saying that he reckoned that you can't do short stories well and the long form well. No, not you, someone else. Richard Cabe Morgan, actually. There you go. So he thought you couldn't do both well. I just wonder what you thought of that.
No, I think that's rubbish. Honestly, I mean, you write what you want to write, and there are plenty of great short story, or plenty of great writers. I mean, James Joyce wrote great short stories. Chandler wrote great short stories. Muriel Spark wrote great short stories. I mean, of course you can do it. William Trevor, I mean, I can think of so many authors off the top of my head who did great short stories and great novels. I mean, people who write great poems and great short stories. William Boyd, great screenplays and great novels. I mean, you write what you want to write, and it doesn't. I think if it doesn't, just because you can do one form well doesn't mean to say you can't do another form well. Musicians, maybe not so much. If you're into prog, possibly can't do punk.
You can't.
Yeah, I know. But no, I think I like to think I do write. I enjoy writing short stories, and I think I've got quite proficient at it. But you can't make a living from doing it. It's really hard. I mean, when I started off, started off writing poetry, when I was sort of getting towards the end of my undergraduate career, I'd moved into short stories. And I was bunging them off to the BBC. Radio 4 used to do 1 or 2 short stories a day. I think it was a morning story and an afternoon story. And they took a few of my early ones, which was a real boon, in the early days. And there were literary magazines and stuff. And so I started off thinking I was going to be a short story writer. But you can't. I knew damn fine I wouldn't make a living doing it. Yeah. So one of the short stories just started to grow and became my first novel, unpublished. Summer Rights started off as was a short story, but it got to 20 or 30 pages. And so it's now in the National Library of Scotland archive.
Christmas 2021.
Yeah.
I see a hand up there. Thank you very much for your question, sir. There's a hand over yonder, up the stairs. There she is. Is it?
Waving. Yeah.
Your question. Your name, madam?
Margaret.
Hello, Margaret. What's your question, please?
I'm interested in Ian's new career as a band singer.
I've not been banned yet.
No.
Any day now, though.
There's time yet.
Yeah, give me that one.
I'm interested to know whether you started that in competition to the fun-loving crime writers, or whether you were refused admission to that band. Because they came first, I think.
Did they?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either.
Is she talking about the covers band?
Yeah, she's talking about the covers band who they only do covers of other songs.
Was the other
we're all original material, madam. All original material.
Well, that's fine. That's the reason. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. No, I mean, it was these 2 journalists in Edinburgh who just were, would go into a studio and just jam. One was a drummer, one's a guitarist. And it just sort of grew from there. It was just a bunch of guys of a certain age wanting to recapture something of their youth and needing a vocalist to help them do that. And it's fun. I mean, just in a studio, just noodling away and coming up, just doing stuff off the top of your head is great fun. We thought our whole ambition was to get a single. Thought, wouldn't it be great to get one song you're really proud of, do a single you can give to your friends and stuff. And we did that. But by then we had 4 or 5 other songs, so we just thought, And if we'd been doing some rehearsals between last October and now, we would have, because last October I wrote a song called In a House of Lies to tie in with the book, but we haven't had the practice since so that we can actually get it ready for into a kind of performative state. So it's not ready to perform yet. And another lovely song called First Love, Last Rights, which is based on the first book of short stories by Ian McEwan, another great short story writer who also writes novels. So we've got a few songs. So we might end up with a set of 9 or 10, which would be
an album.
Yeah. If it's it won't be any time soon because we've got no plans to go and noodle, and our bass player lives in London these days.
At the end of the session, we will give you Ian's MySpace.
Well, you know what? There was a big box of singles, unsold singles at the gig last night, and I said, I'll take that back to Edinburgh, but it was pissing with rain. I said, I can't do that because I'm running to the train. Next, if anybody knows anybody who's coming to my gig here next week, I'm actually going to have the singles for sale. I'm going to bring along a big box of singles for sale on hot pink vinyl, man.
Keep one by.
Keep one by for you, mate. Don't worry.
Thank you very much.
I'll give you signed £5, unsigned £10. How does that?
Yeah.
Anybody over here? We've got a mic over here, and this mic has not been well used.
Everyone over yonder got a question for Ian over there.
Oh, there we go. That gentleman
there's someone
there,
up there.
It's coming to you, sir.
Good evening, sir. Your name, young man?
I'm Richard. I'm from
Richard.
Nidri.
Richard.
I'm a big fan of Rebus, and my wife's a big fan of Quentin Jardin's Bob Skinner. So I was just wondering, have you ever thought about a collaboration between the two?
Oh, man. This is one of these things that when crime writers get together, we often talk about that. It'd be fun if my detective and your detective. And then in the cold light of day, you go, that's kind of complicated. that is going to get kind of complicated, and we almost never end up doing it. There's been a couple of collections of short stories, and they were quite fun, where they would get two writers together to do a short story, and I was paired up with Peter James.
Yeah.
So Peter James's detective works in Brighton, Rebus is in Edinburgh. You think, how the hell do we get the two of them to work together? And we found a way to do it. I said to Peter, I said, look, mods and rockers, riots in the 60s, somebody's killed on the beach at Brighton. Rebus in Edinburgh, 40 years on, is having to investigate what happened that day. So we managed to bring a kind of Brighton Edinburgh thing. We managed to make it work. But there was some really interesting ones. Michael Connolly's detective had to work with somebody else, and I forget what. But it's tough. It's hard. Peter Robinson's detective, who works in Yorkshire, and we often talk about doing a collaboration. What we sometimes do is sneak references in to so Michael Connolly's had me in one of his books, and I think John Harvey had me in one of his books, and I've done it with a few other writers. Now, here's the thing. Every year for not every year, every time I write a book for charity, 4 or 5 times I will auction off the right to be in the book for real people who've paid charity to be in the book. Last September, I was in America at the World Mystery Writers Convention, and there was a charity auction. I said, yeah, there can be a character in my next book. The organised committee next day, they said, well, we had 2 winners. They bid the same amount of money. Would you put 2 people in? I said, well, yeah, okay, I can put 2 people in. Who bid the most? Lee Child and Karen Slaughter. two very famous crime writers.
Okay.
So how do you do it? You can't have Detective Constable Lee Child. People go, that's ridiculous. So I've somehow got to get the real them. Will have to somehow be in the next Rebus book, and I have no idea how I'm going to do that.
Did somebody say murder at a book festival?
Hey. So the next book will be set in August.
I foresee an event.
I love doing it. I've got a few in here. In fact, Haj Atwal, who's the senior crime officer in the last 2 books, is a real guy. He has the Subway sandwich franchise in Scotland, ladies and gentlemen. But in my books, he's the senior crime officer. There's a detective. I'm going to forget her name now. Christine Essen. Christine Essen is a Edinburgh businesswoman who paid to be in the books way long ago, but haven't made her a cop. She just crops up all the time.
Yeah.
The journalist, the kind of crime reporter for the Scotsman, is a Canadian woman who again several years ago paid to be in the books and just keeps coming back up because I need a crime reporter, so it might as well be her. But my favourites, I mean, I've told this story before, my favourites, woman who paid for her cat Boethius to be in the book and sent me photographs of Boethius.
Oh, really?
And a full psychological profile of
Here's Boethius dressed as Rebus.
It wouldn't be just a cat, it would be her cat, you know. And then my very favourite one, and I'll tell it very quickly because I've told it before, but a music charity, Nordhoff Robbins, you'll know them, done it, and it was in London, and it was like a music auction night, and they said, well, we've got a winner, and he's called Peacock Johnson. I went, what? They said, yeah, he's given us his email address, get in touch with him. I got in touch with this guy, Peacock Johnson. He said, oh, look at my website. And on his website was this photograph of this really shady-looking character. And I said, well, I don't know what I'm going to do with you, buddy. And he said, I don't care as long as my friend Wee Evil Bob can be in there too, please. So I needed a gun runner, a kind of guy selling arms illegally in Edinburgh. So that was Peacock.
Yeah.
And his sidekick, his lieutenant, was Wee Evil Bob. And I just enjoyed the process. So so I emailed him back and said, I loved writing about you. Maybe I'll write about you again. Email bounced back. That address no longer exists. So I went to his website. No longer exists. So I turned detective, young Phil, and at the event that night, a band were playing called Bell and Sebastian, whose bass player is a notorious practical joker. Stuart David, and his email address was almost identical. So I got in touch with Stuart David, and he said, yeah, it's me. He said, I made up that entire persona. I said, so I was taking a fictional character who I thought was real and making him fictional. I said, well, can I write about him again? And I went, no, you can't write about him again because now I'm going to write about him. Look this up. Go online and just Google Peacock's Tale or Peacock Johnson. You will find this novel. You can download it for free. Yeah. In this novel, a guy called Peacock Johnson is framed for murder. And he runs home to his wife. He's in Glasgow. Runs home to his wife and says, what am I going to do? And she said, she's watching TV. She said, go to Edinburgh and see this guy. And she's watching an episode of Rebus. So he jumps on the train, goes to Edinburgh, goes to the Oxford Bar, and says, I need to talk to Inspector Rebus. I need his help. They say, he's a fictional character, buddy. But Ian Rankin is round the corner in the back room. So the fictional Ian Rankin ends up helping the fictional Peacock Johnson prove his innocence.
Has anybody got any Nurofen?
Yeah, I know. It is like we're living in the Matrix.
Delightful. I mean, we've got time for a few more questions. A couple more. There's one there on that side of the room.
And there's a guy over there in a red jumper.
A red jumper over there. You hold there, sir. Your name, please, madam.
Hi, it's Katie Ember.
Hey, Katie. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Cool. Your question, please.
My question is, what do you like reading for pleasure yourself?
I do read a lot of crime fiction. I read a lot of fiction. I read a lot of non-fiction books. I've just read Dorian Lynskey's book, which is about the making of 1984, the book. It's a book about how the book came to be. My son got me that for Father's Day. It was a great gift. He also got me a copy of Where Eagles Dare, Alistair MacLean's novel, which I read when I was a kid, and I'm going to reread that. Just been rereading that Arthur Upfield book, Boney, crime mystery novel set in 1950s Australia. I get sent a lot of books. I mean, publishers, of course, send me a lot of books. They would love me to give them a puff. A puff is a kind of quote you can put in the jacket. I get sent many, many, many more books than you probably get sent tons as well.
Not anymore, mate. I was famous in the 90s.
Bless you. So I get sent, and you can't read them all. I read maybe 50 or 60 books a year, maybe a wee bit more than that. But I get sent hundreds. And I feel very guilty because a lot of first-time novelists. I was there once. When I lived in London, just got married, moved to London, had just published one book. I got the London phone book, the directory, and I would go through going, Bragg M, that might be Melvin Bragg. I'll send them a copy of my book. And because it gave you the address. So I would send a book to M. Bragg of NW3 saying, if you are Melvin Bragg, I hope you like this book, and I hope you can give me a quote. I mean, that's how desperate I was when I was a young, kind of first-time novelist. I wonder if that's Martin Amis, or it just could be a Mr. Amis. I mean, you know, no idea.
Yeah.
And you go, well, actually, these people were probably all ex-directory by then. But, yeah. But what did I know? What did I know? I was just kind of really, really keen and hungry. So I feel really bad not reading every single book that gets sent to me and giving them a puff. But you can't do it. You can't do it. But I read widely. I read rock biographies and film biographies.
Recommend us a rock biography.
Well, The Dirt, Motley Crue, it's an old one, but it's an oldie, but a goldie.
Good.
Keith Richards' autobiography, I think, is really, really good. I'm trying to think what I've read recently. It's not a rock biography, but I did read that one. I'm going to forget what it's called. It's the one about people coming from Saturday Night Live and reinvigorating the world of film comedy in the 80s and 90s.
Oh, no.
I forget what it's called now. That was really, really good.
Danny Sugarman, Wonderland Avenue.
Oh yeah,
About the Doors.
yeah,
That's
amazing.
great.
Yeah. And there's a ton of really good rock biographies coming out, and some of them are even written by the people who were in the bands. You know, they're not using ghostwriters nearly as much as he used to.
Yeah.
And some of them are just really great, and some of them, of course, are not so great. But yeah, so I read a ton of those, and I like all the obscure ones.
Yeah.
You know, like a list of Edinburgh gigs and Edinburgh clubs, and you know, anything to do with punk.
Yeah.
Any unsuccessful punk bands. This is Memorial Device, which is a novel about a kind of airdrie punk band. Is as good as a real kind of punk band biography would be. But yeah, I do read a lot. But then I read Twitter too much. If I didn't do as much tweeting, I would get a lot more books read, and I would get a lot more books written. Frankly,
the internet.
I know.
So okay.
I know. It's a time suck. And there was a guy with a red jumper.
Indeed. Katie, that answered your question. The gentleman over here. Your name, sir?
My name is John. And
hello, John.
Thank you very much, Ian. Can I ask whether you ever thought about moving Rebus to another town, or maybe to England?
Oh,
Get out of the tent, John. Get out.
He's been south of the border once, I think, and actually maybe twice. I think I took him to Newcastle in one book for a short scene.
He's one of the blokes sat on the goalpost at Wembley that day.
Yeah, I know. No, the third book was set in London because I was living there and I hated it. So I thought I'm going to take Rebus out so he can hate it as well. And,
like Morrissey. London is dead. London is dead.
And nobody can understand his accent and all the rest of it. And no, Edinburgh. If I ran out of things to say about Edinburgh, or I ran out of things to explore, or aspects of Edinburgh that weren't new to me, if it felt that I knew the place, then I could stop writing about Edinburgh. But I just keep finding new things, historical moments, or bits of Edinburgh are being uncovered by archaeological digs, or because they were doing this and we're doing that. We're finding out things about Edinburgh we didn't know before. Politically, the city's changing. Socially, it's changing. Economically, it's changing. So I've just not run out of things to say about the place. And Rebus doesn't own a passport. He's not, when he was a cop, he was never going to get sent anywhere as an ambassador of the Edinburgh Police Force. We need a cop. A Scottish person's been murdered in London. Let's send a cop dinner. Who can we send? Rebus? No, wouldn't happen so much. So no, and there's, Glasgow makes no sense to me. It confuses me. I get lost whenever I go to Glasgow, and so. And Rebus, when he goes to Glasgow, gets lost. I did take him up. We've got a house in Cromarty, I've mentioned, and people up there said, you should set a book up here, you should set a book up here, but obviously in a kind of Black Isle accent. Okay, so when I brought Rebus back, that book was set partly in the Black Isle. There's a murderer lives there, there's murders and stuff. And they went, oh, why did you do that? And luckily I hadn't taken Rebus to Cromarty. I'd left him one village short of Cromarty. So it was like Christ stopped at Eberley, and Rebus stopped at Rosemarkie. So there was no murder actually in Cromarty, spoiler alert. But there was bad stuff happened at Rosemarkie. Oh, why did you do that? That was terrible. But that's as far as I've taken him, I mean, he's not a natural traveller, shall we say. As long as he can go to the Oxford Bar, and from Marchmont to the Oxford Bar is about his beat, I would say. And during that process, he has to pass Cafferty's apartment.
There you go.
Yeah. His world is shrinking. Not getting wider, but shrinking.
I wish I could say that. So
yeah. You've moved well out of your comfort zone. You're living in East Fife, man.
I'm loving it.
And he's going back to college. He's going to be a full-time student at Dundee.
Yeah,
Doing
yeah.
art at Dundee.
So
that's going to open. Dundee is going to open your eyes in a whole new way.
Yeah. For example, I know that they go out on a Wednesday night in Dundee. I can't get my head around that. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen.
The 4 Js, Jute, Jam, Journalism and Jupitus.
Boom. That's a good one to finish on. Just a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, the signing will be taking place in the signing tent, which is next door. He'll be the guy with the Sharpie and the winning smile. If you want selfies, have the camera ready before. Don't do all that. I'll turn it on. No, have it ready. Okay. We like it when you do that. A round of applause for Joe, who's been signing for us. A round of applause for our sponsors from Hampdens and Company. That's banking.
Never catch on. It will never catch on.
It will catch on. It will catch on. Shut up. I'm not doing anything at the Fringe, and I'm delighted not to plug it. Mr. Ian Rankin, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Phil Jupitus.
In a House of Lies is out now in paperback. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for all the staff at the Edinburgh International Book Festival.
Thank you very much.
Off you go, fella.